Hello and welcome to Live at PALS, to another GED Science screencast. Today we will have a look at 12 GED life science questions. So that is mainly a biology. If you don't know, the GED Science test is made up of a portion of life science questions, some physical science questions, which is mainly chemistry and physics, and some earth and space science questions. The earth science questions are mainly biology related as well, or geography related. So yeah, that's what you will find on the GED Science test. So let's get started with our questions. The first question we can see is related to the two pie charts that we have up here about inhaled and exhaled air. We can see from the key that the dark gray color relates to nitrogen, the amount of nitrogen in the air. The medium gray is oxygen and the light gray color is carbon dioxide. So the question asked, what fact about human respiration is confirmed from the circled charts? Oxygen is used and carbon dioxide is released during respiration. Nitrogen is a byproduct of respiration. Oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen are the only three gases involved in respiration. Nitrogen is the most important gas for respiration. So for sure we should know a little bit about respiration as well to answer this question, but the chart itself probably is able to tell us all that we need to know. So if we look at the amount of nitrogen in inhaled air and exhaled air, the air that we breathe in and the air that we breathe out. Inhaling means breathe in, and this is the air that we breathe out. We can see that the amount of nitrogen, N2, is the same. There's the same amount of nitrogen in inhaled and exhaled air, and that tells us basically that nitrogen does not take part in respiration as a reactant or product. If we look at oxygen, we can see that oxygen in inhaled air is more than in exhaled air, and the opposite is true for carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is more in exhaled air and less in inhaled air. And from that we can conclude that oxygen is used in respiration because it's getting less, and carbon dioxide is released during respiration because it's getting more. So the correct answer here is A. Question 2. Lime water turns milky when carbon dioxide is passed through it. Jenna designs an experiment in which she exhales air through a straw into a beaker of lime water. The lime water turns milky. Which of the following can be most properly inferred from the results of this experiment? Lime water becomes cloudy over time. Lime water can turn milky for many different reasons. Exhaled air does not contain any carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is exhaled during respiration. So the important bit of information that we get here is that lime water turns milky when carbon dioxide is passed through it. Change the color here. So turns milky when carbon dioxide is passed through it. So since exhaled air contains more carbon dioxide than the air around us, significant amount more, if we breathe out through lime water, the lime water will react with the carbon dioxide and turn cloudy. So the correct answer is D. Carbon dioxide is exhaled during respiration, and that's why the lime water turns cloudy. What is the name given to the protective outer layer of a tooth? So this is a question, a vocabulary question. Some facts you need to know in biology. There's not too much you need to memorize, but some basic things we need to know in for GED Science. So yeah, the different parts of the tooth are listed here. Actually, neck is not a part of the tooth, but the root is, the crown is, the enamel is as well, and the outer layer of the tooth is called the enamel. The crown is the visible part, the top part of the tooth, and the root is the part of the tooth that anchors it into the jawbone. In which of these body systems does the tooth play a significant role? Since we are biting and grinding and chewing our food with our teeth, and the purpose of that is breaking down large pieces of food into smaller pieces of food for several reasons, to make it easier to swallow, but as well to increase the surface area of the food that we eat, for aiding then later on in chemical digestion. And yeah, the breakdown of large pieces of food into smaller pieces of food without any chemical change, what our teeth are doing, this is what we refer to as mechanical digestion. And we can already see that this must be therefore part of the digestive system. Circulatory system, yes, the heart and the blood vessels. Nervous system, our brain and the spinal cord and the nerves, for coordinating and responding to changes in our environment. And endocrine system is an organ system that contains gland organs which are producing hormones. So let's have a look at the next question. So this prompt here refers to question 5 to 7. Let's have a read through this. Brain lobes have been shown to be related to different brain functions. The cerebrum is the largest portion of the human brain and is divided into 6 lobes. So we're talking about the cerebrum here, and it has 6 lobes. The frontal lobe is where conscious thought takes place. Damage can result in mood changes or social differences. The frontal lobes are the most uniquely human of all brain structures. Mood changes, social differences. The parietal lobe plays an important role in integrating sensory information from various senses and the manipulation of objects. Portions of the parietal lobe are involved with visual spatial processing. So with what we see and the space, like how far objects are away from us, that's what visual spatial processing is. The occipital lobe gives us a sense of sight, so it has to do with our eyes as well. So the parietal lobe is probably related here to that. Lesions can produce hallucinations. So any damage to it can produce hallucinations. The temporal lobe gives us a sense of smell and sound, as well as processing of complex stimuli like faces and scenes. So putting visual information together. The limbic lobe for emotion and memory, and the insular cortex for pain and some other senses. So which of the following might result from an injury to the limbic lobe? So one more time, limbic lobe is for emotion and memory, the loss of short-term memory, partial blindness, hearing problems, problems with depth perception, so that, well, very likely must be the loss of memory. So blindness, hearing problems would probably be more one of these ones here, 2, 3, or 4. Which statement best summarizes the information in the passage? All human brains are the same size. Well, we don't get any information about that. The shape of the brain varies from person to person. There's no information about the shape of the brain really here. Specific parts of the human brain control specific body functions. That sounds very good. The size of the brain is related to the organism's intelligence. There's no information about that either, so I think this is a pretty easy question here. These questions can be much more tricky. Often in these questions we have statements that are all somehow correct and relate to some extent to what we've read, and then it's more difficult to pick the correct answer. But I think here it's pretty straightforward. The information that we get up here, they're all about specific parts of the human brain and what role they play, so their specific function, And what happens if there's some kind of damage to them eventually? Number 7, we remember the faces of people we saw a long time ago. Which lobes of the brain are most likely responsible for that? So it's about remembering, memory, and it's about faces. So without reading the answers, if we have a look up here, earlier we highlighted faces. That's right here. So the temporal lobe is about faces, and memory, the limbic lobe. So it's probably temporal and limbic. Let's see. Okay, that is not an option. So we have frontal and temporal. So that involves the temporal at least for faces. Parietal and occipital, not about faces or memory, so probably not. Occipital temporal could be, so that again involves the temporal for faces. Frontal and parietal, probably not. Occipital, sense of sight, can produce hallucinations. Frontal, conscious thought. Parietal. So I would go for probably C here, since temporal absolutely processing of complex stimuli like faces, so processing takes place in the temporal lobe. So to be able to process faces, we have to see them, and the occipital lobe has to do with the sense of sight. So therefore I would go for C in this question. Makes most sense, I guess. Okay, so we have another question here that relates to another short paragraph. 2 questions, 8 and 9. The 2 types of nerves that carry messages to and from the brain are the sensory and motor nerves. Motor nerves carry messages from the brain to control muscles and operate body systems, whereas sensory neurons carry messages from the surrounding environment to be processed by the brain. When an ant bites you in the hand, what is most likely to happen? So the ant bite is a so-called stimulus. And as we just read here, sensory neurons or sensory nerves carry messages from the surrounding environment or from our senses to be processed to the brain. Whereas motor neurons or nerves carry messages from the brain to control our muscles or other body systems. The hand informs the motor nerves that an ant is biting it, which in turn tells the sensory nerves to kill it. Well, our nerves don't kill ants in general, I guess. But what is wrong here is that the order is not correct. The hand informs the sensory nerves that an ant is biting it, which would then turn or go to the brain and then tell the motor nerves. The sensory nerves, so that starts better here, on the hand send impulses to the brain about the ant bite. The brain then signals the motor nerves to remove the ant with a muscle action of our other hand probably. The motor nerves on the hand send impulses to the brain. Nope, we can cross that out too. Again, a wrong order. The brain signals both the motor and sensory nerves, and together they help. Nope. So the only thing that makes sense here is B, in terms of order of how signals travel, although it's not worded very well. Again, the motor nerves themselves will not remove the end, but the motor nerves are connected to different muscles in our body that will then, or in our other arm, which we will move to remove the biting end. Write the answer in blank. The optic nerves transmit visual information captured by the retina to the brain. They can be classified as they transfer information from a sense organ to the brain, so it is a sensory. So our last three questions for today's screencast. The three major structural tissues in the human body are fat, muscle, and bone. Three major tissues: fat, muscle, bone. Fat can be of two types: essential fat or storage fat. Essential fat is stored in bone marrow and in organs. Storage fat is the type we usually think of as excess fat, since it often adds unwanted weight to our bodies. Storage fat is fatty tissue that surrounds internal organs or is deposited beneath the skin. So a little bit more colors here. So we have essential fat is bone marrow, organs, whereas storage fat is more like excess fat, adds unwanted weight to our body. Storage fat is fatty tissue that surrounds internal organs or is deposited beneath the skin. Okay, the following circle graphs compare the body composition of an average-sized young man with that of an average-sized young woman. We can see that in the average-sized man we have quite a bit more muscle tissue, a bit more bone tissue. Others is more or less the same. Storage fat in women is a bit more, and essential fat is a lot more. Instead of 3% in males, we have 12% in women. So women have a lot more essential fat in the bone marrow or around organs to protect organs. Which tissues make up a greater percentage of the body composition of an average-sized young man than an average-sized young woman? We already saw muscle mainly, and a little bit of bone, and that's probably what we're looking for. Bone and muscle. That sounds reasonable. Total fat is less in men than women, so we can exclude A and C. Muscle only. Not really, because yeah, 3% of bone, almost 3%, 2.9 definitely plays a role here. So Isabella is an average-sized young woman, and Noah is an average-sized young man. Which statement about Isabella and Noah is best supported by the passage and the graphs? Isabella has a more difficult time losing weight than does Noah. That's not really supported. That's not what the graph and the passage is about. It's not about losing weight, how this is done. Isabella has a higher percentage of total fat than Noah does. That looks good. Isabella has the same percentage of total fat than Noah does. Probably not, because we can see that is different here. Total fat is 27% in women, whereas it's only 15% in men. So probably not that. And Isabella eats more sweets than Noah. Again, this is natural. This is not caused by a difference in diet. It's not mentioned up here, so we can exclude D as well. So it must be B. B makes most sense here. And the last question, what is the most reasonable explanation for why women tend to have a higher percentage of total fat than men? This is not mentioned here, but we can have a look at the answers and choose the most reasonable one. Women have broader hips than men. Doesn't really relate to the amount of fat, so I would exclude this for now. Women have a larger appetite than men. That is not really, doesn't really make sense either. Women's bodies use added fat to protect female reproductive organs. Women tend to do less physical labor than men. Again, this is all very individual, can't be generalized. A and D, B and D, sorry. Since in the paragraph it tells us that essential fat is stored in bone marrow and in organs, plus storage fat surrounds internal organs or is deposited beneath the skin for protection probably. So yeah, that makes most sense. The ovaries and the uterus are probably protected by an added layer of fat. Okay, that was it for another GD Science screencast. I hope you learned a little bit today, and I will see you for another screencast with more questions. Have a good day.